fast, agile, aggressive, clever, tenacious, and powered by 8. Welcome to Ferrari's latest arachnid, the F8 Spider.
The F8 in the name refers to what's behind me, the engine, which has won so many awards, it's almost embarrassing. So this is basically the engine from the 488 Pista and Pista Spider. And the biggest changes have been to the internals of the engine, so titanium conrods, lighter flywheel and crankshaft. And they say that results in, well, an engine that's 18 kilos lighter than the 488, but has 17% less inertia. So it's a bit like running with a lighter pair of trainers on your feet or something. You really do notice it in the way it picks up. Just rips through the revs. It's amazing to use. It just makes the whole engine feel brighter and more alive to the throttle. Oh, the response is unbelievable.
And of course the engine is matched by the mind-blowingly good 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox. One thing that's not quite so thrilling as it used to be, however, is the sound.
There's just not quite the bark or the blare or the angriness to the sound of the engine, I don't think.
The reason for this? Well, it's not really Ferrari's fault. I think it's due to the fact that the F8 has had to have, for the first time, GPFs, or gas particulate filters, fitted.
They're a bit like the face mask of the automotive world. They obviously do a good job at stopping the nasty particulates from getting out, but they also take away some of the character. They make the voice harder to hear. There's an analogy for our times.
Thankfully, the GPFs haven't actually affected the numbers for the turbocharged V8, which are 710 brake horsepower and 568 pounds-foot of torque. Exactly the same as the Tributo, and enough to see it hit 62 miles an hour in just 2.9 seconds on its way to 211 miles an hour, flat out. What's patently not the same as the Tributo, however, is the roof.
Now, this is the same folding hardtop roof that we've seen from the 488 Spider, and it goes up or down in around about 14 seconds. All very clever, and as you can see, with the roof up, it's really every bit as habitable and comfortable and refined and quiet as the Tributo.
Of course, it does add some 70 kilos over the Tributo, but at 1400 kilos dry, the F8 Spider is 20 kilos lighter than the old 488 Spider and only 20 kilos heavier than the Pista Spider.
Now, the thing I was really worried about before I tested this is actually what happens when you put the roof down in this car, because I remember driving a 458 Spider and being, well, frankly, very disappointed, because as soon as you put the roof down, the structural rigidity, or lack of, became very obvious indeed. And I wanted to know, is it still the same? Has Ferrari solved it? Because obviously there's no carbon tub beneath this. This has an aluminium chassis. And initially, certainly, when you put the roof down, you can feel the extra flex. However, what you don't get is the steering wheel sort of wandering around. That is much better located than it ever was in the 458. So now it's not the distraction it was. Also, curiously, you notice it straight away when you put the roof down, because it seems at its worst at around about sort of 30-40 miles an hour on a bumpy piece of road. So you notice it straight away. But as soon as you start driving more quickly, as soon as you start putting some load through the car, through cornering or accelerating or braking, it seems to just go away.
And that's important, because Ferrari offers another turbocharged V8 convertible option, and the F8 needs to be palpably better than the Portofino when it gets to the corners.
I love that it has so much grip, yet it's also so playful. It's a really interactive car. It's not just all grip and go and you hang on. As usual, we've got all the various modes on here, so wet, sport, race, CT off or ESC off if you want to go without all the aids entirely. And as ever, the beauty about Ferrari is it makes those aids feel very seamless, really. They don't get in the way, they just help you. The only one I have been able to feel a bit is perhaps the FDE Plus.
FDE is a system that was first introduced on the Pista and has now been updated on the F8 so that it works in race mode too. It's similar to something that we've seen McLaren employ, whereby subtle braking of individual wheels is used to help get the car into and out of a corner with even greater alacrity. It's subtle, but sometimes you just noticed a freakish agility that almost feels like the wheelbase has been momentarily shrunk.
One of the incredible things is that while it has the bumpy road setting, which is undoubtedly a help when you're driving this just normally, because it's nice having the extra bit of comfort, you don't actually need it on the majority of bumpy British B roads because it rides so well anyway. The damping is so good that you can leave it in its firmest setting and it copes perfectly well. If anything, I think you probably need it in the firmer damper setting simply because that hyper agile steering makes more sense when you've got the reaction from the suspension as well, the lack of roll. I also love the sense of airiness and space, the visibility, the fact you can see these two arches, which makes it so easy to place.
And that's equally crucial whether you're just out to enjoy yourself or if you're on an important mission to find food.
Now clearly, this car was meant to be launched in Italy, hence the left hooker and the Italian plates. And I thought, well, let's bring a little bit of Italy to the UK as well as the car and have some pizza. Excellent Italian pizza as well. And it gives me a chance to stop and talk a little bit about the styling of this car to start with, because it was penned by the Ferrari styling centre, not Pininfarina. And all the photographs I'd seen, it looked a bit flat, I wasn't quite sure, a bit bulky. In the metal, different story entirely. I think this is a really, really good looking car. And all the volumes and shapes and things that you see here, it's stunning. Better obviously with the roof down than the roof up, you'd expect that, because the buttresses then stand out more. Other things to talk about. A couple of the options on this car, because this has an awful lot of options. This is about £220,000 as standard, but this has got about £50,000 worth of options, most of which is exposed carbon. But why pay £4,500 for an engine cover in carbon that you can't even really see? Better, I think, to go for the titanium options, so about £1,500 for the titanium exhaust. Even better, £960 for titanium wheel bolts, which obviously have a fantastic effect on rotating an unsprung mass. Other options, £2,400 for Apple CarPlay. Really? I mean, I know it's a Ferrari, but that seems ridiculous. However, the passenger screen, which I thought was a bit of a gimmick, apparently everybody loves it. Everybody that's been in the passenger seat says this is brilliant. I love being able to see what's going to swipe across, look at it. So there we go. That apparently is £2,500 well spent.
Undoubtedly the greatest value comes from something which I think is often glossed over, Ferrari's genuine maintenance programme, which gives free servicing for the first 7 years of the car's life.
Finally, the other thing I wanted to say about this car is the colour scheme, because it's very traditional Ferrari. Everybody always thinks of Ferrari as being red, but that's the Italian national racing colour, as we know. Yellow, much more Ferrari. This is Giallo Modena, and it's because the Modenese flag is yellow and blue, and inside we have blue sterling leather. So this is about as typically Ferrari a colour scheme as you can get.
What to conclude about the F8 Spider?
Well, there's a lot of competition in this segment, but what Ferrari does so well is, while technically it's behind them in some areas and definitely ahead in others, it has its own thing. If you want this feeling, this agility, this engine, there's nothing else like it.
It might chase numbers, but when you drive the car you're never left with the impression that numbers were the be-all and end-all when it was being developed. It is also a Ferrari, with all the Dolce Vita glamour that the name entails. and that still counts for something, especially in a Spider.